Thank you for your detailed presentation. It was really interesting to hear since a lot of countries around the world are facing threats from ISIS. What's your view of the ISIS crisis? How should we solve this issue?
I'm not sure, but one thing that I'm sure about is that military intervention should be the last resort to deal with ISIS. The commentators might be able to offer a different opinion. I'd like to invite the first commentator, Jiyeok Moon, from Michu홀외고 Foreign Language High School. How do you feel about the issue?
Thank you. First, it is a great honor to participate in this conference and give a commentary speech about the presentation about political morality. But first, I would like to inform that my speech is solely based on the paper that was given before the presentation. So the approach that this thesis paper took with the ISIS problem was very interesting. The paper used the well-known consequentialism and deontological ethics to the problem and analyzed the problem based on those two ethic theories. I was impressed with the fact that this paper had come up with the idea to focus on ISIS problem with two contradicting theories based on morality. The paper also explained well about the two concepts and made it easy for the readers to comprehend what the paper is going to deal with. However, after the first few pages, the paper started to reveal its faults and flaws. There were some problems that were negligible. This paper, to be straightforward, was not readable at times, and it was too difficult to understand the real purpose of the paper. First of all, the format had problems. Although there are various ways of writing a thesis paper, this paper ignored the entire format and had some distance between what we call a thesis paper. Of course, it is true that all of the papers don't really have to follow the APA style study, which is the most commonly used one, but it needs to at least have some kind of basic guideline. This paper didn't have a research question and a literature review. A research question is considered the main point in academic writing. It informs the readers what the paper is going to be about and how it is going to progress with its experiments. Since it gives organization and a theme to the writing, it is necessary in academic writing. Also, this paper was missing a literature review and relied on the estimation that the paper made with only small amount of statistics. This lowered the credibility of the paper, making a somewhat disappointing quantitative research. Next, it had plenty of loopholes and flaws in the studies done by the paper. For example, when the paper was trying to explain about the application of consequentialism to the problem, it was quite unclear. The paper said that when it is about the cost in terms of finance, engaging in war would be less costly than avoiding the war. However, the paper didn't state enough reasons supporting details to this statement. According to the paper, engaging in the war would cost about $14 billion annually, which means that if the war is engaged more than a year, then it could have the opposite result. Also, I would like to point out the results yielded from the study about consequentialism. The paper only limited the application of consequentialism to each of the criteria. However, consequentialism can work both ways. For example, if engaging in a war costs less but makes more casualties, the latter could be sacrificed. However, in the other way around, if avoiding the war makes fewer casualties but costs more than engaging, then the money could be sacrificed under consequentialism. Therefore, consequentialism does not necessarily justify war. Therefore, the opinion that the paper holds cannot be verified and needs more supporting detail. Also, not to mention about the study of deontology, I'll rephrase a statement from the paper. They said that it is undoubtedly true that an action conceived by all as moral should at all times never be a choice as an alternative, or never be a choice or a final alternative. They limited their research by themselves and yet continued the study. This was so confusing, and it seemed at times as though they were only doing the research for the sake of it. Moreover, it was shocking to see the references and the sources that this paper has used. It used New Daily, New York Times, Huffington Post, YouTube, and even Wikipedia. It is common knowledge that Wikipedia and those article sites are not the best sources for a thesis paper. Although those sites are very easy to find and contain lots of information, they're not as credible as other sources and are likely to be biased and not verified. Most of the references were comprised of those sites that were not suitable for a thesis paper. Furthermore, the paper's results and conclusions were paradoxical and confusing. The research paper didn't have a clear conclusion. The paper did explain about the characteristics of two ethic theories, but they jumped straight to the conclusion, saying that engaging in a war would be the most morally justifiable choice. The study done in the paper was not really that related to the conclusion. The paper only provided a survey to support the conclusion, which only asked the students which side they were on, and it only showed which side was supported the most. That was the end of the process, yielding no real conclusion. This process is not credible at all, since it has no relation with the results and has no supporting works or studies. To make a conclusion, solid and elaborate research is needed to support the conclusion. But since it was just a survey with no precedent studies, it could not verify and support the conclusion that the paper had, which in itself made little sense. To sum up, I believe that the approach that this thesis paper made to a serious international conflict like the ISIS problem was very interesting, and it was a great attempt to adapt those two ethic theories to the paper. However, I believe that this paper is quite inadequate as a paper that is seeking for a solution to the problem. Also, it was not written in a proper format, which made the quality much lower than what I expected. Except for the introduction, the whole process of the research had some faults and flaws. But I believe that if more profound and well-considered research was made with regards to this paper, it would have been much more acceptable. I do believe that amending or revising the work will definitely make a better and decent paper. Thank you.
Next, we are going to hear other comments from Yoo Sun-min from Incheon Foreign Language High School. Could you give us your opinions?
Hello, my name is Sumin Yu. I'm from Incheon Foreign Language High School. Before I make a comment, I want to appreciate for your theory and presentation. It was very interesting and meaningful. Also, I want to say, same as this commentator, my comment is only based on the paper too. To begin, this paper handled the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. It is interesting that you tried to view ISIS in two different perspectives. Especially the many situation examples you offered in this paper are helpful to easily understand these two contrasting moralities. Thus, I want to rate this paper highly for dealing ISIS with moralities attracting readers' attention at first. However, I'm sorry to say that this paper has let the readers down of their early expectations and attention. First of all, this paper's organization should be reorganized. There are many errors in the overall organization. I want to emphasize the importance of precise organization. In this paper, contents from the introduction to the conclusion make us wondering why they are placed under those subtitles. In the introduction part, ISIS is presented. However, extra content which defines consequentialism is not needed. It is better to be placed under the body part because the introduction part of the thesis is generally composed of just big and simple information. In fact, these are out of the order and need to be reorganized. Wrong organization makes readers confused while reading. If it is improved like this way, it would be better for readers to read and understand. Secondly, the statistics of finance, human lives, and question investigations leave much to be desired. For the statistics, there are many loopholes. You wrote that cost of engaging in war is $15 to $20 billion annually, but for how many countries? You didn't mention about the number of countries concretely. Also, you compared the human lives damage with World War I and II that the whole world has been engaged in. However, ISIS is just the terrorist group. So it is an unsuitable comparison because there is the size difference between those two wars. For the question investigations, I couldn't get your points. What are these questions for? These are only 2 questions are too weak. More questions are required, and these questions' contents should be supplemented. Then this would be very helpful to make readers trust this paper. Lastly, the most serious problem is that this paper does not have its own verified opinion. It just bumbled between consequentialism and deontology. In fact, you argued that the world should engage in the war according to consequentialism, while you also argued that the world should avoid the war according to deontology too. Moreover, these are likely to be the facts, not your opinion, so your paper is more likely to be research than thesis. Thus, it will be better to have except on one assertion as the thesis. In conclusion, this paper has some problems with wrong organization, insufficient information and questionnaires, and vague opinion. So it is strongly believed to be repaired like this way so that this paper could be more reliable and interesting forward. Thank you.
Thank you for the commentators. Now, are there anyone who has a question?
Well, it is a great honor to hear papers from made by International School. Well, the question I have is that in the October, the Blue House declared that the official name of ISIS is changed into ACIS. So, the question I have is that why the paper writers use the name of ISIS not instead of IS?
I think this is a format question, not necessarily a question related to the content.
I really enjoyed your presentation and I got a question for you. I wonder how is perception of the students on ISIS military intervention relating to the topic? Because in my personal opinion, I could not find any relevance between the perception of students and the subject. So can you give that answer?
We included the perception of students to draw up the conclusion that the perceptions of students were also very similar to the perceptions of the international community. So through including this segment about the perceptions of students, we hoped that this paper made a conclusion that just like high school students have these perceptions, the international community also had a very similar perception, and that war was justifiable in the case of the ISIS crisis. Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, to ask the question, I would like to first ask the moderators: is the crowd able to question the commentators?
Yes, you may.
Okay, then I would like to ask the commentator Moon Ji-hyun that why the Huffington Post and the new daily newspaper sites are not suitable for the reliable parts. I mean the reliable sources of the information. Thank you.
If you have ever read a academic writing written by experts and professors, if you look at the references of those papers, you'll notice that they're not comprised of the article sites, New York Times. Those articles are written by the people in the news company, which means that it could be biased and it could not be verified. That is why I pointed out that the academic writing such as this research thesis paper should not have a sources like Wikipedia, Huffington Post, and such. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the speakers for a great speech. I'm just wondering why they made a relativism with the refugee and ISIS when not all refugees are made from the refugee and ISIS.
Can you repeat the question?
So, I'm wondering why you guys made why you said something about refugees when not all refugees are made by ISIS.
The term European refugee crisis considers only refugees that were caused by the Syrian war and the ISIS crisis. So that's why in our paper we mentioned about the European refugee crisis.
Hello, my name is Karen Kong from Michuhol외고 High School. First of all, thank you for your wonderful speech. It was really impressive and interesting. At the very beginning of your speech, you said that the definition of morality is a matter of right and wrong. So I want to ask, what does the right and wrong really exactly mean based on your thesis?
Can you repeat the question?
I want to ask, what does the right and wrong exactly means based on your thesis?
So the meaning of right or wrong, we were trying to answer the question of is it right to go to war against ISIS, and we needed a standard, which is where the necessity of referring to the philosophical concepts we talked about earlier comes in. So right or wrong, it's a very subjective value. So the meaning of right or wrong, is that what you're asking?
Yes, based on thesis, your thesis.
So what was the right decision here according to our thesis? That it was justifiable.
And please keep the speakers and commentators of session B.